Shavua Tov and Good Yom Tov. Welcome to the Grand Farbrengen in honor of the yahrzeit of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe and the 70th anniversary since our Rebbe assumed leadership of Chabad. Tonight is the evening between Yud and Yud Aleph Shevat, between the 10th and 11th of Shvat. Exactly 70 years ago on this evening, the Rebbe recited his first mimer. In the discourse, the Rebbe launched Tzivos Hashem, Hashem's army, which will actually bring Mashiach, and declared that his Hasidim will not be bored. We're here to work. We're here to win the struggle with the falsehood of the world, and everyone needs to be part of it. Join us in reliving this momentous occasion. This is the first joint event of several Chabad centers in Israel serving English speakers. We hope that this will jumpstart other such great joint events. I would like to thank Rabbi Aaron Schmidt, Shliach of the Rebbe of Ramat Beit Shemesh Aleph, for initiating this amazing event, as well as my other esteemed colleagues and their communities who are also sponsoring this online Farbrengen. Rabbi and Mrs. Schmidt of Chabad of Ramat Beit Shemesh Aleph, Chabad of Rechavia, Rabbi and Mrs. Farrow of Hechal Menachem, Chabad of Dolev in Beit Shemesh, Rabbi and Mrs. Seabag of Chabad Anglo of Be'er Sheva, and Rabbi and Mrs. Traxler of the Artist Quarter Minyan, Chabad by the Galleries in Tzvat. We are beginning this Farbrengen with a musical presentation by the famous Simcha Friedman, and then we will hear our special guest, Rabbi Shais Taub of New York. This fascinating talk was obviously pre-recorded before Shabbos, especially for this event. If you would like to contribute to this initiative, please contact myself or Rabbi Aaron Schmidt. Without any further ado, Simcha Friedman, take it away.
Agut Tevoch, Agut Yom Tov. Welcome to the Farbrengen of Yud Shevat, celebrating 70 years of the Rebbe's leadership. What a zchus to be part of this Farbrengen, uniting the English-speaking community in Eretz Yisrael. So, may we all merit to welcome Mashiach, Tegef Umiyot Mamash, and let's start the Farbrengen with a nigun of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Nigun HaBeinoni. Enjoy, everybody, in your babatim, in your homes.
Naida,
This was a nigun from the Rebbe Rayatz. The Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe, very loved this nigun. He said that this nigun reflect the darge of Beinoni, of Tanya, that always struggling. The nigun is like always, there is ma'avak, there is a war between the Yetzer of Nefesh Abamis, Nefesh Elikis. So, let's do a nigun from the Rebbe. The Rebbe told us this nigun, Hu Elekeinu, Hu Elekeinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, Hu Yoshienu, Ve'igaleinu, Terai Dai Dai Dai, Shenis Bekoroiv, Ve'yashmienu, Be'rachmav Le'veinei, Kol Chaylei Moir, Hengo Al Tieschem, Magriz, Kivreshis Li'yoy Zilochem, Le'Eloikim, Hengo Al Tieschem, Magriz, Kivreshis Li'yoy Zilochem, Le'Eloikim, Ayad Rallam, Terai Dai, Anderalai Lai, La, Ay Dai Dai, La, Ay Dai Dam, Hu Elekeinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, Hu Yoshienu, Ve'igaleinu, Terai Dai Dai, Shenis Bekoroim, Ve'yashmienu, Be'rachmav Le'veinei, Kol Chaylei Moir, Hengo Al Tieschem, Magriz, Kivreshis Li'yoy Zilochem, Le'Eloikim, Hengo Al Tieschem, Magriz, Kivreshis Li'yoy Zilochem, Le'Eloikim, Ay La La La, Ay Da Yam Ba 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 Ba, Ay Da La, Ay Da Dam, Ay La La La, Ay Da Yam Da La 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 La, Ay Da La La, Ay Da Dam.
Shalom Aleichem, and I guess I should say a good tavach, because by the time you're seeing this, it will be Motzei Shabbos in Eretz HaKodesh. This is a very special Yud Shevat Farbrengen. As I understand, this is the first time, at least perhaps in the recollection of many, that so many English-speaking communities throughout Eretz Yisrael have gotten together for an event like this. I guess sort of part of the new reality is that we've been forced to make use of technology in a way never before. And so here I am in America, L'havdil, speaking to you in Eretz HaKodesh. And you in Eretz HaKodesh itself are from many different communities coming together. I just want to mention Chabad of Ramat Bet Shemesh Aleph, Chabad of Rechavia Yerushalayim, Chabad of Dolev Heichel Menachem Bet Shemesh, Chabad Anglo of Beersheva, and the Artist Quarter Minyan Chabad by the Galleries of Tzfat Ir HaKodesh. And I hope I haven't left anyone out. Those were just the communities that I know about who are involved in in tonight's event. Anyways, let's start with the L'chaim. L'chaim to one and all. And Amirat Hashem, tonight's Farbrengen should have its effect. So how should we begin? I believe we gave a title to tonight's event. The Rebbe's vision, then and now. So what's the Rebbe's vision? What was it then? What is it now? So let's just talk a little bit about what happened on the 10th day of Shvat, Tavshin Yud Aleph, 1951. The Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, was nistalik on Yud Shevat Tavshin Yud, 1950. And throughout that year, the Rebbe was in many ways conducting himself as the leader of Chabad, but had not yet officially accepted the title of Rebbe. And on the first Yortzeit, at the Farbrengen, on the occasion of the first Yortzeit, the Rebbe was Farbrengen all that year. There were many Farbrengens that year. So it wasn't a Chiddush that the Rebbe was Farbrengen on Yud Shevat. And of course, for Yud Shevat, for the Yortzeit, the first Yortzeit, of course it was expected the Rebbe would Farbreng, but would the Rebbe Farbreng as Rebbe? That wasn't known. And then, in the middle of the Farbrengen, the Chassidim asked the Rebbe, they demanded, Rebbe, we want to hear a mimer. So the Rebbe said the mimer, the first mimer Basi Legani. Now, when the Rebbe started, there was no mimer nigun, the nigun hachana that's usually used to prepare for a nigun, the nigun that's used to prepare for a mimer. So, and then when the Rebbe started, it wasn't really clear that Rebbe was saying his own mimer, because the first lines of the mimer is the Rebbe repeating the Frierdiker Rebbe's mimer, Bos Legani Yechesi Kala, right? But then the Rebbe started adding his own explanations and taking it to a whole new level, and it became clear that the Rebbe was saying his own mimer, and then after that, it was official. And in this mimer, and really the whole Farbrengen of Yud Shevat, Tavshin Yud Aleph, the Rebbe is describing a vision. And that vision is a radical vision. It is the ultimate vision. I mean, it's the highest stakes. You can't get any more idealistic than what the Rebbe described at his first official Farbrengen as Rebbe. The Rebbe described that the goal of our generation is nothing less than the complete perfection of the entire world, of all Seder Ishtalshlus, of all worlds. Everything that human history had been leading up to, everything, all the sorrow, the pain, the challenges, everything we've been through as a people, it all is going to be culminated in our generation. We're going to bring Mashiach. And not only, I mean, that's wild enough. We're bringing Mashiach. But we're going to bring Mashiach. Who's going to do it? We are. Ein hadavar talu ela banu, like the Rebbe said. The matter depends only on us. Kol echad ve'echad midera shvi. All the members, each individual member of this generation. And not because we're so great, and not because we earned it, but by, call it, quote-unquote, accident of history, that we showed up at this juncture in history, and here we are, we're the ones, we're born at this time, and we've got the job, we're going to do it. So very, 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 very radical. We're going to bring Mashiach. Okay, that's first of all, we're going to finish the job of all generations, and who's going to do it? We. Little old you and me. I mean, it's one thing, the Rebbe, to say, The Rebbe's going to do it. But the Rebbe said, no, from day one, you're going to do it. So, I'll ask you a question. What happened to the Rebbe on Yud Shevat, Tavshin Yud Aleph? What do I mean, what happened to the Rebbe? When did the Rebbe become Rebbe? I mean, we just got done explaining the Rebbe didn't officially accept the leadership. But I'm asking a Hasidic question here. I'm asking, zwischen uns, among us Chassidim. When do you think the Rebbe really became Rebbe? Chassidim say, a Rebbe is geboren, nicht geworden. A Rebbe is born a Rebbe. He doesn't become a Rebbe. The Rebbe was Rebbe from day one. The Rebbe became Rebbe Yud Aleph Nissen when the Rebbe was born. And not only was the Rebbe a Rebbe, Neshama Klolos, from day one, but it seems even the vision that the Rebbe communicated publicly at the inaugural Farbrengen, the Rebbe had that vision too from, I guess, the Rebbe's whole life. I mean, how do we know this, by the way? There's a letter in the Igros. The Rebbe writes to Ben Tzvi, to the president of Medinat Yisrael. And of course, the title, you have a prime minister. I'm telling you, you live in Eretz Yisrael. So you have a Rosh HaMemshala, which is the prime minister, and then you have the president, the Nasi, right? What does Jackie Mason say about it? He has a line about that, right? Like every good Jewish businessman, he always has a partner, so that whenever someone wants to make a deal, he says, I don't know, I have to talk to the partner, right? So you got to have the other guy, I don't know, I got to talk to the other guy. Anyway, so the Rebbe wrote a letter to Ben Tzvi. In fact, it's interesting, the date of the letter is Yud Aleph Nissen. And it's interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, because, Yud Aleph Nissen, the Rebbe's birthday, the birthday is the day that really defines a person's mission in the world. It's the day that your soul came to the world this time around to do what it needs to do here in this world. So, a letter that the Rebbe's writing on his birthday is really, an expression of the Rebbe's purpose here in this world. It's also interesting, I said it's interesting for a couple of reasons, that, Jimmy Carter called the Rebbe on his birthday on the phone, and Maskiris told the Rebbe the President of the United States is on the phone, and the Rebbe said, tell the President that on a person's birthday he's supposed to be misbaited. It says in the Hayom, he's supposed to spend time alone and to contemplate. It's a day of meditation. I can't talk to him. So, sorry, the President of the United States is calling, but I'm busy, right? So the fact that the Rebbe took time out and he wrote this letter to Ben Tzvi on his birthday is obviously very meaningful. Obviously, it was an important thing that it was given precedence or priority to be done on the Rebbe's birthday. And it was in this letter the Rebbe tells Ben Tzvi why he's not going to call him by his official governmental title of Nasi. And the Rebbe basically says the word Nasi, to me, has very, very specific connotations. It's not just it's not a modern term. Nasi is a term that's used in Gemara, and the phrase itself, the term itself, goes back. It's of biblical origins, and it basically means a leader of the Jewish people who has no authority over him other than Hashem himself. And so the Rebbe says, look, you're an ish emes, you're a sincere person, so I'm not gonna be diplomatic with you. I'm gonna say it to you straight. I think you'll appreciate the truth. I can't bring myself to use the word nasi in a secular context like this. And I'll tell you why. And this is the remarkable part. The Rebbe shares a glimpse into his life. The Rebbe says, since the day I was brought to Cheder, And even before that, the image of the complete redemption of the Jewish people began to take form in my mind. Okay? Imagine this, a toddler, a little child, 2, 3 years old, is already starting to imagine what the redemption is going to look like. The Rebbe says, I started imagining what is this redemption going to be that is great enough and amazing enough that it'll make up for all the suffering the Jewish people have been through throughout the millennia. That it'll be enough of a nechama, enough of a comfort that we will actually be able to do what the prophet says we're going to do when Mashiach comes, and we're going to say to Hashem, Eidcha Hashem Asher Naftabi, I thank you Hashem for the angry seeming treatment that you gave us during Golus. So the Rebbe says, to me the term Nasi is describing the leader, meaning Melech HaMashiach, that's going to be in that time. And until such time, I'm sorry, I can't throw around words like that. That word is reserved for that time. At any rate, the point is, you see that the Rebbe's vision, that the Rebbe communicated, Yud Shevat Tafshin Yud Aleph, wasn't something that Rebbe came up with that day. It wasn't like, oh, well, you know, the Rebbe is about to officially accept leadership. He's got to have a theme, right? You got to have some type of an agenda, right? So let me sit here and think, you know, what do we need to come up with? What do we need to do? It wasn't something that Rebbe came up with that day. It wasn't even something that Rebbe came up with that year. This idea of being singularly focused on the vision of redemption was something that Rebbe had with him his entire life, since he was a small child. So I return to the question and I ask you, what happened Yud Shevat Tafshin Yud Aleph? What changed for the Rebbe? That the mission was now bringing Mashiach? The mission was bringing Mashiach long before that. For 48 years, the Rebbe was thinking about how to bring Mashiach. So that certainly didn't change just because the Rebbe officially accepted leadership. So then what changed? What happened? Hear my question. Hear what I'm saying. So I'll tell you how I think it's helpful to look at it. You know Jonathan Sacks, Olav Shalom. It feels very funny to say Olav Shalom, by the way, about Jonathan Sacks. But Jonathan Sacks, Olav Shalom, he has this great line about the Rebbe. He said it at the Kinnas HaShluchim. And it's really succinct and sums up one of the real, I think, major features of the Rebbe's style of leadership. And I'll just tell you what Jonathan Sacks said. He said, good leaders make followers. Great leaders make leaders. Right? The Rebbe was a great leader. The Rebbe made leaders. I'll tell you even more. I'll say it perhaps in a little bit more of a radical oifen. Throughout history, we had Rebbes, and the Rebbes had Chassidim, and came the Rebbe, and the Rebbe made Rebbes. The Rebbe made Rebbes. What I mean to say is the Rebbe took regular people, individuals, and lifted them up to the level of a Rebbe. What do I mean by that? Once upon a time, it was enough for each individual Jew. You do your Avodah, you learn, you daven, you do mitzvahs, you take care of your family, maybe even your community, and you're a good Jew, and that's it. That's all you need to worry about. To worry about the whole world? the redemption, the perfection of the universe. Who does that? A Rebbe does that. A Neshama Klolos. A Nasi. But a regular Jew doesn't have to worry about those things. Comes the Lubavitcher Rebbe and says, you think this is just my job? No, it's your job too. Ein adavar tala ela bonu, us, loshen rabim, collectively, kol echad ve'echad, medera shvi, every individual from this generation. So when I say what happened, Yud Shevat Tovshin Yud Aleph, really to the Rebbe nothing changed. Who changed is us. On Yud Shevat, the Rebbe took the entire generation, the entire Klal Yisrael, and collectively, as well as individually, deputized us. Shliach shel Adam Kameisei, put us in the status of having a global vision and a responsibility for the entire world and for bringing all of history to its completion. Now, you could ask why that was never done before. Why was the Rebbe the first one to do it? Okay, and I don't know if I can answer that. What I do know is that, why was Chassidus revealed when it was revealed? And then why were different levels of Seides HaTorah revealed more in subsequent generations? And the general klal is we understand that when certain things are needed for the generation, so the Nasi takes responsibility to, on a need-to-know basis, he brings that stuff out and he reveals it. So apparently, at this juncture in history, this final phase, the last thing that needed to happen was that we all needed to be brought behind the scenes, so to speak, into the war room, where they have the maps and everything, like Moshe Meislish when he was spying for the Alter Rebbe, and he was in the war room with Napoleon was looking at the maps, how they're going to invade Russia and all that stuff. Okay, once upon a time, a chassid was a soldier. He's at the front line. He gets his orders. He doesn't have any idea what the battle plans are. He doesn't know battle plans. He just knows you stand there, you point your gun, you shoot. And that was enough. That was enough. Comes the Rebbe and says, come on in. I'm going to show you the battle plans. I'm going to explain to you the strategy, and I'm going to ask you to innovate. That was never done before. What do I mean by this? A story that I heard from a shliach from Nachman Sudek, Olav Shalom, from London. And he told me when he went on shlichus, Pasha didn't know what to do. This is back in the 50s, okay? So this is early shlichus. This is, a few years after Basar Lagani, a few years after the inaugural Farbrengen, So nowadays, a younger man goes on shlichus, and before he even gets to his makam shlichus, he already has his logo and his letterhead, and he knows the first 3 years of Purim parties, what the themes are going to be, and he has the decorations already in storage. Because everything is, it's a paved path. He knows what's going to happen because, thousands before went and it's more established. But Nachman Tzudek goes on shlichus. He didn't know what he's supposed to do. So it's very funny. He's learning in 770 and he keeps asking Chadakov for permission to go on shlichus. And Chadakov is getting instructions from the Rebbe whether or not he's ready or not. And he tells him, no, go learn, continue learning. Okay. And after a while, he kept getting the answer, continue learning. Then finally, yes, you're ready, you can go. So that's it. He's ready to sign his life away. The Rebbe even asked him, where do you want to go? He says, wherever the Rebbe wants to send me. Okay, Mesiras Nefesh. Wherever the Rebbe wants to send me. Ready to give my life away. All right, so the Rebbe says you're going to go to London. Okay, fine, no problem. But then here comes the little minor detail. And in Yechidus, so Nachman Tzudek asks the Rebbe, by the way, minor detail. When I get there, what do I do? It's beautiful. It's beautiful because like he's giving away his entire life. Wherever the Rebbe wants to send, where do you want to go? Wherever the Rebbe sends me, right? And then he doesn't even know what he's signing up for. Okay, and it's a beautiful thing, that level of Mesiras Nefesh. But so he asks the Rebbe, when I get there, what do you do? Because the shlichus model wasn't established. He didn't know what programs you're supposed to do. I mean, remember, this is before Mivtzoyim. There's no 10 Mivtzoyim. What do you do? I'm a shliach. Okay, but what do you do? So the Rebbe's answer to him, to me, is just so mind-blowing. The Rebbe told him, there are thousands of things to do. And the Rebbe didn't tell him any one of the thousands of things. See the beauty in that? The Rebbe didn't limit it by telling Nachman Sudak what those thousands of things are, or even what one or two of them might be. The Rebbe just said, there are thousands of things. And then the Rebbe added, keep your eyes open and you'll see. You understand what we're describing now? Every time Reb Nachman was asking him, can I go on shlichus? The answer from Charakov, which was coming from the Rebbe, no, continue learning, until finally the answer was go. What was happening there? Learning doesn't just mean, sitting in a holding tank, right? Sitting in the freezer, right? We're sitting in the yeshiva, you're just learning, because we got to have a place to put Bachram. It's a warehouse for Bachram. Chas v'shalom. Learning means, Tanya, Perikei of Tanya says, Limud Torah is mazain, it's food. Why? Because you eat food and becomes your flesh and blood. When you learn Torah, it becomes you. So you sit and you spend an hour learning Torah, it's not just the hour that was well spent. No. And it's that too, because any time you spend doing a mitzvah is time well spent. But Torah has an additional effect, which is the after effect. That it's not just the hour that you spent learning Torah, it's how that hour will now affect every other experience you have for the rest of your life. Because the hour you spend learning Torah, that is mazain, that's food that you are, spiritual food that you are metabolizing. It becomes your flesh and blood. In other words, as you're learning Torah, it's rewiring your brain, it's rewiring your thinking. And now think about that. Once your brain has changed, now everything else you will experience will be through that lens, through that filter of the new way of thinking that you got from that hour of learning. So it's not just how that hour was spent, it's how that hour is going to affect the rest of your life. So the Rebbe told him, keep learning. Learning means not just sit there and keep busy with a sefer in front of you. Learning means wire your brain. Teach yourself how to think. And now you're ready. Now you know how to think. Okay, when I get there on shlichus, what do? Keep your eyes open. You'll figure it out. You get that? Because see, the Rebbe is a Rebbe of Chabad. Moichin, Chochma Bina Das. There could be a Rebbe of Chagas, of emotions. That's a Rebbe who inspires you, who excites you, and that's one thing. But a Rebbe of Chabad is a Rebbe who teaches you. And not that the Rebbe tells you what to think, contrary to popular misconception. The Rebbe doesn't tell you what to think. The Rebbe teaches you how to think. And when you have the Mahalach HaMachshava, you have that, the Halach Yelech, the Derech HaLimud of the Rebbe. It's a way of looking at things. It's a way of thinking. And now, once you've learned it through the Rebbe's Torah, not just knowing what the Rebbe said, but getting the Rebbe's approach, the Rebbe's style, the Rebbe's signon. Now, go to your Makom Shlichus, keep your eyes open, and figure it out. And the Rebbe doesn't have to give you a list, a laundry list, a checklist of thousands of things. The Rebbe can just let you know, there are thousands of things. Now go there, figure it out. I was talking to Simon Jacobson the other day, and we were talking about this idea about how the Rebbe made leaders, and more than leaders, but people who are supposed to see reality from the Rebbe's perspective, right? So there's a Sikha, Tafshin Ba'aleischa, Tafshin Nun Aleph, the last Sikha Ba'aleischa that the Rebbe said. And over there, Baal Oischa is about raising up the lights. Why is it raising up? So the Rashi there, Rashi says that it's not hadloka, it's halo. What's the difference? Halo means you raise the light, the shalheves ad shal oila me'eleho, until the flame is burning self-sufficiently on its own. And the Rebbe was speaking about, chinuch, basically, what is training, what is education? It's to create mastery so that the student becomes a master. The student can go take the ball and run with it, right? So that was the whole theme of that Farbrengen. So Simon Jacobson tells me he's writing up the Hanacha, and there was one part where they couldn't exactly figure out what pshat was, and they felt bad to not finish the Hanacha, but they really couldn't decide. There were two ways of interpreting a particular line, so they wrote both ways, and they sent it into the Rebbe with a request that the Rebbe should show them which of the two ways is the correct way, right? So Rebbe Simon said he got the Hanacha back, and the Rebbe said, there are actually 5 ways in total, and you figure out what the other 3 are besides the 2 that you mentioned, and pick the one that's right. The whole Farbrengen was about shalheves ha'ila me'eleha, right? Gaining mastery, gaining self-sufficiency, figuring out how to figure things out on your own. And then, this is a living example of it, the Manichim wrote in and said, we can't figure it out. Is pshat this way or that way? Is it A or is it B? And the Rebbe says, actually, there's an A, a B, a C, a D, and an E. Figure out what the other 3 are that you didn't even figure out. And then, of those 5, you pick the one that's most correct to include in the Hanacha. But again, that's the same idea. What the Rebbe told Nachman Tzudek. What do you do when you get on shlichus? I don't know. Keep your eyes open. Figure it out. You figure it out. What I'm saying is the chinuch that the Rebbe gave this generation, if I can permit myself to say such a thing, the chinuch that the Rebbe gave this generation is Rebbe training. That's what it is. The Rebbe trained Rebbes how to look at the world from the Rebbe's perspective. And the Rebbe spoke about this in many, many different ways. Like, for instance, after 40 years from Yud Shevat, from the Istalkus of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So the Rebbe was Farbrengen about the Maimer Chazal. It says about it takes 40 years to understand your Rav. Right? It says Lekoi in the Shadaita the Rabbi ad Arboim Shnin. So again, Lekoi means to stand up. So standing up means not just you can repeat. You can chazer over what the Rebbe said. But to stand up means that you get the approach until it becomes your approach. And not just the de'oisav shel rabbi. Daitoi de rabbi. What's the difference between de'ois and das? De'ois means that you can quote the Rebbe's opinions on different things. Das means the Rebbe's mind. That the person is actually able to mind meld, kaviyachol, with the Rebbe, so that through learning the Rebbe's Torah, you're able to think the way the Rebbe's taught you how to think. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a very pashut example, but what I mean by the Rebbe taught us how to think. If you ask a Lubavitcher, what do you think about Land for Peace? Okay. Well, maybe, talking to this crowd here, it's very negeya, maybe it's on a practical day-to-day, in your practical day-to-day life. Mesiras Hashtachim is not a theoretical concept. It's something that affects you in your day-to-day life. But imagine you ask some Lubavitcher living in Los Angeles, okay? And you ask him, what do you think about Land for Peace? Should his response be, well, I don't know, maybe it could work, but I'm a Lubavitcher, and the official policy of the Lubavitcher Rebbe is it doesn't work. So therefore, I say it doesn't work. Should that be his response? Or, because the Rebbe spent thousands of hours of his holy time explaining it as a milsa b'taima, the Rebbe could have just gotten up and said, guys, this is the policy, that's it. No one would have questioned it. But the Rebbe spent thousands of hours of his holy time explaining it logically, why it works this way and why it can't be any other way, right? So if you'd ask a young man, what do you think? Land for peace. Should he say, well, the Rebbe says it's not good? Don't quote the Rebbe to me. Like, don't quote it as if you're distancing yourself from it. The Rebbe gave time. The Rebbe gave energy to teach you to understand it. It should be your opinion. So if I ask a Lubavitcher young man, what do you think about land for peace? He shouldn't have to quote the Rebbe and say, well, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said. Don't tell me the Lubavitcher Rebbe said. The Rebbe taught you how to look at that issue. So I mentioned before that the title of this Farbrengen is the Rebbe's vision. What does the Rebbe's vision mean? The Rebbe's vision means that the Rebbe taught us how to view things. That's what a vision means. I think it was Helen Keller who said, what's worse than being blind? Having sight but lacking vision. Okay? What does vision mean? Vision is not with einei basar. It's not physical sight with your fleshly eyes, right? When the Rebbe told Nachman Sudak, when you're going to get to London, you'll be on shlichus, keep your eyes open. What do you mean keep your eyes open? For that matter, let me ask you, when the Rebbe was speaking about Mashiach, right? When the Rebbe was speaking, the last sichas in the last years, the Rebbe was speaking about Mashiach, and the Rebbe said that you can see Geula already, madaf ufafen in the egen. You have to open your eyes. What did that mean? You have to open your eyes. Physically, you have to open your eyes. Madaf ufafen in the egen, you have to open your eyes, means the Rebbe didn't just give us orders. I'm saying he didn't just give us orders. The Rebbe also gave orders. The heroes of the Rebbe, of course, the Rebbe gave orders. But the Rebbe didn't just only give orders. It wasn't just talking to soldiers on the front line saying, stand there, point the gun that way, and shoot in that direction. I told you from the beginning, the Rebbe took us into the war room with the maps all laid out and taught us strategy. He brought us to West Point, and he taught us military strategy. And not only he showed us the strategy, but he even said, maybe one or two of you will figure out a strategy that I didn't tell you. Maybe you use your noodle and use your smart Jewish brain and figure out a strategy that I didn't tell you. So when we're talking about the Rebbe's vision, what does it mean, the Rebbe's vision? Not that Chas v'Shalom, the Lubavitcher Rebbe was a great man who had a vision. Chas v'Shalom. The Rebbe had a vision since he was a baby. This is what he told Ben Tzvi. The Rebbe's vision he had since he was a baby. That's not the point of Yud Shevat. The point of Yud Shevat is not to say there was a great Jewish leader called the Lubavitcher Rebbe and he had a vision, right? I have a dream, right? You just had, you know what you guys remember from, you know what Monday was, okay? Chas v'Shalom to say that the Lubavitcher Rebbe was a great man, he had a great vision. And Yud Shevat, the whole point of Yud Shevat is that the Rebbe transferred his vision to us. The Rebbe gave us his eyes. You know, sometimes you hear people talk about the Yechidus with the Rebbe, or even dollars with the Rebbe, and being struck by the Rebbe's eyes, the Rebbe's blue eyes, looking into the Rebbe's eyes, being transfixed on the Rebbe's eyes. A lot of Chassidim didn't even want to look right at the Rebbe. So more often when you hear those stories about the blue eyes, it was not Chassidim. I know Rabin talked all about the blue eyes, right? As Chassidim, though, it's not about looking at the Rebbe's eyes. It's about looking with the Rebbe's eyes. The Rebbe gave us his eyes. So, what does that mean? That means when you open up a Chumash and you start learning Chumash Rashi, the Rebbe taught us how to learn Chumash Rashi. You think the Rashi Sichos was so that Rebbe should show his lamdus, that everyone should know that Rebbe is a lamdan, knows how to learn? When the Rebbe would teach the klolei Rashi, the Rebbe would teach klolim, like principles, because it was the methodology. How do you do it? It wasn't just when the Rebbe would teach a rule, for instance, of Rashi, and then it would come up in the next week's chitas, and the Rebbe would say in the Fabrengs, it's not in the Likutei Sichos because they cleaned up all that, but in the original Hanachas, the Rebbe would say, where are the ha'aras, where are the scholarly articles written by the Bachram? Right? I taught this rule last week. It came up in this week's chitas. How come you guys didn't write an article? How come I'm the one who has to constantly come up with these ideas? In other words, the purpose of the Rashi Sichos was not that we should know how to learn the Rashis that the Rebbe taught. The whole purpose of the Rashi Sichos was that we should be able to learn every Rashi that the Rebbe didn't teach. Right? I mean, there's Chochmah and there's Bina. What's Bina? Like it says in Perek Gimel of Tanya, Hamev davar mitoich davar. What does it mean? Hamev davar mitoich davar. To understand one thing from another thing. In other words, don't just tell me what you were told. Tell me what you weren't told that you can figure out based on what you were told. They say there are two kinds of people in this world. One type can extrapolate from incomplete data. That's the joke. You get it? It's a nerdy joke. Okay, fine. Right? Two types of people in this world. One type can extrapolate from incomplete data, and then you don't finish it, right? What's the other type? You go extrapolate from incomplete data. Anyways, the point is, you'll laugh on the way home after you. The point is, not to tell me every Rashi that the Rebbe taught. Tell me the Rashi that the Rebbe didn't teach, but using the klolim, the rules that the Rebbe taught. The Rebbe spoke about this idea also. Rebbe Meir, the Tana, he went to Rebbe Shmuel and he learned the entire Torah Sheba'al Peh. And then afterwards, he took Rebbe Akiva as his Rebbe. Now, let me ask you a simple question. If Rebbe Shmuel taught Rebbe Meir the entire Torah Sheba'al Peh, then what did Rebbe Meir need a Rebbe for? What did he learn from Rebbe Akiva? Rebbe Shmuel already taught him everything he knew. So there was nothing more left to learn from Rebbe Akiva. And yet, the Gemara says that Rabbi Muvhak was Rebbe Akiva. Meaning the main rabbi of Rebbe Meir was not the man who taught him everything he knew. It was Rebbe Akiva. What did Rebbe Akiva even give Rebbe Meir if Rebbe Meir already knew everything from Rebbe Shmuel? So the Gemara says that from Rebbe Shmuel, Gama Gemara. From Rebbe Akiva, Savar Svara. What does that mean in plain English? From Rebbe Shmuel, Rebbe Meir learned all of the Mishnah. He learned everything, the whole Torah Sheba'al Peh. From Rebbe Akiva, Rebbe Meir learned what to do with it. He learned what to do with all of that information. And that's what made Rebbe Akiva Rabbi Muvhak of Rebbe Meir. Not the one who told him everything he knew, but the one who taught him how to use the information, how to arrange it, how to put it together, how to make inferences, how to come to conclusions. In other words, the man who taught him how to think. Rabbi Muvhak of Rebbe Meir was not the man who taught him everything he knew, but was the man who taught him how to think. When we talk about the Rebbe's vision, we mean that Rebbe taught us how to think. And that's something as simple as opening up a Chumash and how to learn Rashi. That's something as confusing to a lot of other people, like Land for Peace, and that it's not a political thing. It's a very clear idea in Teiras Emes. That's part of the Rebbe's vision. And probably the biggest example, I could give examples and examples and examples of how the Rebbe's vision teaches us how to look at every aspect of life. But probably the biggest example, the Rebbe, I'll ask you, the most radical shift in thinking, how the Rebbe taught us to look at something very different than the way the rest of the world looks at it. The biggest shift in thinking, and I also think the biggest success, the biggest the area where Baruch Hashem, Lubavitchers really did get it. We did get the Rebbe's cook, the Rebbe's vision. You know what it is? In my humble opinion, how we look at a Jew. How we look at a Jew. When a Lubavitcher puts on tefillin with Chiloni, does the Lubavitcher think to himself, well, really, I'm better because I'm frum. That guy's not as good as me, but I'll help him out. I'll do him a favor, and maybe I'll promote him. I'll get him into the VIP club, and then he can become as good as me. The Lubavitcher think that? I'm telling you that. I mean, I have friends who are not Lubavitch. They don't believe that we don't even think that. No, you don't say it because it's not polite, but of course you think it. And I try to tell them, no, we don't even think it. When a 15-year-old Lubavitcher Bacha goes on Mivtzoyim, and he's asking adults, excuse me, sir, are you Jewish? Would you like to put on tefillin? He doesn't think for a second, not for a second, that the guy with the tattoos and the piercings that he's putting tefillin on is one drop less Jewish than he is. Doesn't even occur to him. Why? Because the Rebbe gave us his vision. When the Rebbe looked at a Jew, the Rebbe saw neshama. That's it. And mitzad the neshama, a Jew is a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. There are no, forgive me for the commentary, and I hope I'm not out of line for saying it, but I want to speak to this audience. You're in Eretz Yisrael, and you know one of the big issues, social issues that really plague society in Eretz Yisrael especially. It's not miyuchad to Eretz Yisrael, but you definitely see it as a part of life, is the fragmentation between religious and not religious, and then even within religious, the different camps and the different communities. And the idea that a Jew is a Jew is a Jew is a Jew, why is that something that every Lubavitcher basically gets intuitively? Because the Rebbe taught it to us. The Rebbe ingrained it in us. And if you learn a sikha, if you learn the Rebbe's perspective on Avos Yisrael, if you learn the Rebbe's description, what is a neshama, what is Jewish identity, what is the essence of a Jew, it just changes your whole brain around. It changes your whole wiring. It changes your thinking. So you look at a Jew differently. You understand what I'm saying? It's not just we treat Jews differently. That's only levushim. That's behaviors. I'm saying it's much deeper. We see Jews differently. We see Jews differently. Why? Because we got the Rebbe's vision of how to look at a Jew. And what I'm saying is that's what happened Yud Shevat. What happened Yud Shevat is that the Lubavitcher Rebbe took his vision that he had since he was a little child, and he gave it to us. It was a process. It took years. The Rebbe was developing in the sichas, the farbrengens, the letters, Maimorim, all through the decades. But the Rebbe succeeded in getting his vision to us. There's a Hayemye. It says that once upon a time, in the old days, the Rebbe's gven elend, and Chassidim zayin gven elend. That the Rebbe was lonely, and the Chassidim were lonely. But Chabad came, and what was it? Mechadish? Was hot Chassidus Chabad ufgetan? What did it innovate? As the Rebbe is nicht elend, the Chassidim zayin nicht elend. The Rebbe is not alone. Chassidim are not alone. What does that mean? We're not alone. What does it mean that they were alone? What does it mean we're not alone? What does Chabad have to do with changing it from being alone to not alone? So let me tell you something. Imagine you are a unique person. I mean, we're all unique, but imagine you are the person, the only person in the world who sees what you see. Imagine you are the Nasi. You are Neshama Klalis. You are sent to this world not for your personal mission, but your personal mission is for the klal, is for the world. And you see from one end of the world to the other, and you see it clearly and vividly. Imagine you're the Rebbe. who do you talk to? Who do you communicate those ideas to? Who can you teach that perspective to? It's like in the Rambam, we learn Rambam every year, right? And in the Hilchos Deis, it talks about or the Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah talks about the Maaseh Merkava, right? The Merkava was only taught by one person to another person who already understands it on his own, right? So basically, a Rebbe teaches a Rebbe, right? That was it. There were certain things throughout the generation. One person in a generation got it, and he taught it to the guy who was his, successor. And that was it. And it wasn't because you had to be a giant. You had to be, a unique person to get that stuff. Why? Because you're talking about stuff that's so lofty, that's so godly, that's so infinite. There just wasn't a language for taking those ideas and communicating them to regular people. And therefore, how do you think that person felt? Is it okay to humanize it for a second? How do you think they felt? How would you feel if you were the person who saw everything vividly? All the problems as well as the solutions, what needed to be done, and how urgent it was, and you saw it acutely, you saw it vividly, but you saw something so lofty, so beyond the normal human experience, that there wasn't even language for you to communicate it to one other soul in the entire world. It's very lonely. Very, very lonely. So the Rebbe was lonely. But came Chassidus Chabad. What did Chabad do? Chabad takes ideas that used to be strictly the domain of emunah, things that you couldn't understand, you had to just believe in because they couldn't be understood, right? The floor of faith is the ceiling of intellect. Wherever the intellect gives out, that's where faith begins. So there used to be ideas that, I'm sorry, you just can't understand them. Obviously, kol chad lefi shurei delay, it's relative. Different people have different ceilings of their intellect, therefore different floors, ground floors of their faith. But imagine a Rebbe who, the place where he begins to have to exercise faith, or let me put it the opposite way. Where we are using faith, the Rebbe is still using seichel. But how does he communicate it to us? There wasn't a language. There was no way for the Rebbe to communicate that. Came Chassidus Chabad, and what was the chiddush of Chassidus Chabad? Is to be able to take concepts that used to be strictly the domain of faith, and Chabad gives a language to be able to discuss the infinite in terms of the finite. Through mashalim, through examples, through mibsari echseleka, by relating it to human psychology and human experience. There's a whole system for it. It's a language. But Chabad takes the unknowable and makes it knowable. That's what Chabad means. What do you think the Chabad part of Chabad means? So now the Rebbe is not lonely anymore. What happens? The Rebbe has a way, through his Maimorim, through his teachings, of describing to us what he sees. Not just that the Rebbe says, I see something and I don't have words for it, but just believe me what I see and it's great. No. The Rebbe is able to explain to us what he sees, and that's what the Rebbe did for 40 years. He spent his time, what do you think the Rebbe spent most of his time doing? Limud Torah. Torah. The Rebbe was learning and teaching, teaching us how to see the world with his eyes. For 40 years. And now it's a different reality because we have the Rebbe's eyes. That's the power, and it's all through the Torah of the Rebbe. Yes, we're inspired by the Rebbe's example, and we're obviously there's a certain Hisaydus we have from the Rebbe's Kedusha, the Haflah, and all of those things. But Be'ikar, the relationship is that the Rebbe taught us and teaches us, continues to teach us. Likutei Sichos is the book that gets smarter every time you read it. Doesn't matter how many times you've been through Likutei Sichos. Every time you go through it again, it's a new sefer. It teaches you something new. Especially if you use the ha'aras, the footnotes. I encourage everyone to learn Likutei Sichos and look up the footnotes, and you'll become a baki b'shas just through the footnotes of Likutei Sichos. The Rebbe is teaching us how to see life. And that's why it makes sense. There was a letter that the Rebbe wrote right after Yud Shevat, right after the Histalkus of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Rebbe wrote to the Chassidim, who were grieving, they were in mourning. And the Rebbe says there a powerful sentence. Gedel hatshuka lehiskashrus, the intense yearning that one has to be connected to the Rebbe, and a yochel lahasbiya, is impossible to satiate, rak, unless only exclusively kasher loimed maimore achsidus she'omer rav, when you learn the maimorim of the Rebbe. Why is limud teirase the ikar hiskashrus? Why is learning the Rebbe's Torah the main connection? But it should make perfect sense now. Because what is the novelty of this relationship? The novelty of this relationship is, here you have someone who sees everything from the beginning of the world to the end of the world, who sees what needs to be done, who sees and who is sensitive, who is aware. And now he brings us in and he teaches us, he trains us, he gives us Rebbe training how to start seeing those things too. When you open up a sefer and you learn the Rebbe's Torah, you're wiring your brain how to see reality from the Rebbe's perspective. And by the way, I don't want to intimidate you by saying Maimorim, Sichas, it could be Hayom Yom. Take out the Hayom Yom at family dinner, read Hayom Yom, it takes 90 seconds. Hayom Yom plants a seed. By the way, the subtitle of Hayom Yom, which the Frierdiker Rebbe gave it, was Luach Eir Zerua L'Chsidei Chabad. Eir Zerua means implanted seeds of light. Every Hayom Yom is a seed. It takes 90 seconds to learn, but it grows on you and it wires your brain and it changes the way that you look at everything for the rest of the day and for the rest of your life. So when we learn the Rebbe's Torah, we get the Rebbe's vision, we get the Rebbe's eyes, and we have clarity. There's so much confusion. I know, Chavra, I know. So much confusion in the frum world, in the world of Torah, where you would think they would have clarity, where you think that there should be a consensus, where you think it should be obvious what needs to be done. All I can tell you is Ashreinu Matev Chalkeinu. The Rebbe had a clear vision from day one, and by day one I don't mean Yud Shevat when the Rebbe officially accepted the Nesias. I mean from day one, from the moment the Rebbe came, from the Rebbe's neshama coming to this world for his mission. The mission was the same from day one. A Rab bringing the Shechina Lamata down here in Elam Hazeh to bring Hashem's presence back to where it was, where it wants to be. That was the Rebbe's vision, singular vision from day one. Yud Shevat, Tafshin Yud Aleph, all that happened was we were brought into that vision. And when we learn the Rebbe's Torah and we digest it and we live with it and we think it, we chazer it over and we say it in our own words, very important, say it in our own words, talk to your kids about it, have conversations, real conversations, a dialogue with questions, with answers, with I don't know, I have to go look that up. When the Rebbe's Torah becomes really real to us and it becomes our vision and our way of looking at things, then you know what's going to happen ultimately? We're going to open our eyes and we're going to see the fulfillment of that vision. We're going to see the world as a garden, as a bosi, legani, as Hashem's garden, as a place of pleasure and joy and beauty. We're going to look around and we're going to see the dira b'tachtein, in kipshutai, in not in a theoretical sense, but in the most practical way. Peace on earth, perfection of the entire world. And how is it going to happen? Through the game plan that Rebbe gave us and the training that Rebbe gave us. So we have to continue to learn the Rebbe's Torah, to internalize it, take it seriously, to implement it. And with Hashem's help, very, very, very soon, immediately, we should see the completion of it all. L'chaim, l'chaim. A good vach again, l'chaim, l'chaim.
So again, a good tevoch, and let's end this special for bringing with the emunah and tzipiyah to Moshiach. Sheibone beis hamikdash b'meheiro v'yomeinu ושן חלקנו בסדר סך. נהי רצוי יהי רצוי יהי רצוי יהי רצוי מלפונך השם אלוהינו ואלוהיכנו אבוי סבבנו נאיישי בונה ביס המקדוש בידו ויומנו וסן חלקנו בסעיר הסבך שיבונה ביס המקדוש בידו ויומנו וסן חלקנו בסעיר הסבך שיבונה ביס המקדוש בידו ויומנו וסן חלקנו בסעיר הסבך שיבונה ביס המקדוש בידו ויומנו וסן חלקנו בסעיר הסבך שיבונה ביס המקדוש בידו ויומנו וסן חלקנו בסעיר הסבך שיבונה ביס המקדוש בידו ויומנו וסן חלקנו בסעיר הסבך We want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we don't wanna wait. We want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we don't wanna wait. We want together, we don't wanna wait. We want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we don't want to wait. Hagut Tevot, Hagut Yom Tov.
L'chaim, l'chaim, good vach, good yom tov. We would very much like to thank Rabbi Shais Taub for his wonderful, rich, and inspiring words on this very special day of Yud Shevat. It was truly an honor to have Rabbi Taub speak specially for our Farbrengen. Many of us have listened to his shiurim over the years, and to have him with us, so to speak, is very unique. And B'ezrat Hashem, the next time, he'll be with us in person here in Eretz Yisrael. And Simcha Friedman for joining us, inspiring us with his great and upbeat music. And of course, to all of you for sharing this special night together. B'ezrat Hashem will have many more events for the English-speaking community of Eretz Yisrael. Now, as the evening comes to a conclusion, I want to share a short story. This is a very well-known story. A woman once came to the Rebbe with an issue she was having. She was selfish. She wasn't so nice to people. She had a hard time making friends, giving to others. She had been to therapy. She had been to other people for help, but nothing worked. Now, she was a college student, and the Rebbe advised her, the next time you're eating in the cafeteria, go out of your way to get for people whatever they need, whether it's salt, water, a spoon, what have you, whatever somebody needs, go out of your way to get it for them. The girl followed the Rebbe's advice, and lo and behold, she was transformed. She became a new person. She moved beyond her constraints and became a giver and became happy. One of the most valuable lessons of the Rebbe is how to view ourselves and the world around us, to see the good, the potential, and the possibilities in ourselves and our fellow, to truly believe in the potential of ourselves and those in our lives. And B'ezrat Hashem, through continuing to follow in the ways of the Rebbe with unity and Ahavas Yisrael, may we merit the coming of Mashiach, Tekef, Miyad, Mamash. Good Yom Tov.